I'm Elandria Williams. I come from Florida and Tennessee in the United States.
And I'm Mabrouka Mbarek, and I come from Tunisia.
Two very different backgrounds. How did the two of you get together and what for?
We met last year in Quito, Ecuador, right? It makes a lot of sense. But we actually were invited by the Global Working Group, which was an initiative supported by the Rosa Luxembourg Foundation. And in this group, we have people coming from different backgrounds, and I guess that's how we met. And we met a bunch of people. And at the time, I was living in the U.S., and so there was right away a connection between us.
And we decided that Mabrouka actually approached me with the idea of what it would mean for us to do a paper together. And so we went across and thought what cities would be interesting, and then decided that maybe we should do a learning journey, that we would both think about the cities we went, but also reflect on our own experiences in the work, and think about how does that relate to the places we're going to see.
So where all did you visit and who did you meet?
So, in fact, just to give a little bit of context, I live in Vermont, and it's not representative of the United States at all. And when I met Elandria, and she was telling me about the struggle, and I realized that even I was living in the U.S., but I didn't understand how deep it was, how important it was for me to understand. So it was, I just asked her, hey, I need to learn, and I need to go with you. So I trusted her, and she pretty much organized our journeys. So you want to say why
so
you
we went
picked?
so I worked with all the people we went to see. Most of them I've helped do work with for over 10 years. And so we went, and it's where my family's connected to. So we went to Jackson, Mississippi, Birmingham, Alabama, and Detroit, Michigan. We were going to add in Newark, but it's a lot. And we chose those places because of the relationships and the connections. So Jackson, Mississippi and Birmingham have had long histories of struggle since radical Reconstruction, slavery, and the Civil Rights Movement. And people from Mississippi and Alabama went up to Detroit. And so the Detroit-Mississippi connection and Detroit-Alabama connection is huge because during the Great Migration, people went from those places up to Detroit and back down. So people are actually migrating all the time from those places. And so it forms like a little triangle with Chicago.
And so, I mean, you've been working on issues that the black population in the U.S. is facing for a long time. So maybe just give a little context to that, and then what was the kind of transformatory stuff that you were looking at in these places?
Yeah, so one thing that was really important for us is to both meet and talk to people who were doing things that are new, but also to meet and talk with people who've been doing organizing for a very long time. So from elders to really young people, because that's really a part of the black experience in the U.S. is that we're not just, we start tomorrow, but it's a 50, 60, 70-year legacy of people still engaged and involved. And so really the key things were to look at what's happening in terms of race and racism in the United States, how's migration playing a role, what's happening in terms of solidarity economy or different economic options for people. What does that look like in terms of local government? And people have been doing radical, trying to get electoral power, get control of the city, especially black cities, since the 30s. And so what has happened according to that? And what's happening in terms of mostly white power economic elite? And so how does that still play a role? So even if you have black political power, what does that mean when the economic power base is still white and generally likes to still be supremacist? So what does that mean to have those two things in context? And to think about how all facets of the economy, from manufacturing to where we live, a prison economy, play a role in how all of that moves. And so some of the things that were that are super interesting, right, is how people are thinking around. So we have this term called Afrofuturism, which is really around where do we want to be creatively? How do we look at science fiction as a way of going, where do we want to be? Not just where have we been, but where have we been and how does that relate to where we want to go? And then how then do we imagine and envision what it looks like. So if we talk about reparations, what does it mean for our families? What does it mean for ourselves? What does it mean not just for land, but what does it mean for the entire way in which we relate? And we are very spiritual rooted, whether it's African or Ubu religions, Christianity, Islam, or more, like in Buddhism. So how do like all the different religious and spiritual ways that we interact with each other, how does that show up in how we actually want to see economy and politics? Because we really do believe that like building community and building spiritual fortitude is like super necessary to withstand all the resistance. And so people are doing amazing things like fabrication technology all over the place, to going, if we know that in 20 years, this is going to be what's on the horizon, how do we make sure we're not behind, right? But we can't also allow manufacturing traditional to go away. And we can't allow like how we just, like how we got farm to go away. And so there's all these things from, okay, yes, we've got like historical farms of black farms from a long time ago, and like how do the farmers move to what does it mean to do urban farming now? What does that look like? And how do you use like plants for medicines? And so in all three of the cities, Birmingham, Jackson, and Detroit, the thing that I think is hard is that they're all basically bankrupt. There's no tax base because all the money is moved out of the city into white flight areas. And so all three cities and actually all black cities in the United States are faced with how do we create with no tax base, right? Like we actually have to create for our own selves everything to move. And I think, and that to me is actually what transformation looks like. And how does that relate to the struggle happening globally? Because global migration is a thing, and black in the U.S. doesn't mean African American. It means black. So that's people from North Africa, it means people from India, it means people from Peru, it means people from all over the world. Right. And so when we think around blackness as a construct in the world and how that relates in the U.S., it also means we have to have internationalist understanding and struggle so that we understand our role as complicit in U.S. domination and our role as people who are pushing back against.
Fantastic. Mabrouka, you want to add something more on sort of what transformatory stuff you saw?
When I went there, I was amazed and I got really inspired by how each struggle actually responds. So in any alternative that is being implemented, there are dimensions of struggle against patterns of domination in every single one, whether it's against police violence, whether it's against water privatization, and so on. So there are always dimensions of struggle against patriarchy, against capitalism, and so on. And in terms of alternative, one thing that really struck me is the creativity with Afrofuturism was quite amazing into being so proactive in imagining a future together, but also the way they shifted their relationship with nature, and nature ceased to become this material world that you extract from, right? But it becomes source of inspiration. So we found a lot of people in Detroit, for example, looking at nature as a source of knowledge and wisdom and applying this into the fabrication lab that they are going on, that is being implemented over there. Personally, this learning journey has been amazing, and I am taking it back to North Africa where I'm going. One of the things that Elandria just touched on it is that in my country, in the region, there's still this idea that the United States is a powerful country, right? Is a democracy. And I think it's really important that we tell these stories on the ground. The struggle of the black community is really important, so that people understand and deconstruct and are able to then struggle themselves against these patterns of domination, whether it's capitalism, neoliberalism, colonization, racism, patriarchy, and the predatory relation with nature.
Thank you. Any quick last words?
I would just say that one thing I think that was very powerful is Mabrouka coming. Yeah. Because people learned so much from Mabrouka's experience in Tunisia. And it made people feel like, one, they're not alone. And two, oh my goodness, this amazing thing was done around what revolutionary things can look like and what it can mean. And also, okay, what are the struggles that are similar? And we're all fighting to think about how we redo without it all getting lost. And so people were extremely inspired and blessed.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you.